Have discovered some remarkable paintings in a tomb that's more than 4,000 years old. What's in it, though? What have they found? Here's RT's Trinity Chavez.
The deserts of Egypt continue to reveal the secrets of a fascinating ancient civilization. Archaeologists have announced the discovery of a tomb that has inscriptions and colorful artwork dating back more than 4,000 years ago. The country's Ministry of Antiquities has unveiled a well-preserved tomb that is thought to belong to a nobleman during the 5th dynasty.
The tomb for a guy named Hui. He was the nobility king, and also he was a judge. The tomb is 4,400 years old, back to the old kingdom.
It's a private high official tomb who lived during the reign of the king Djedkare, the 8th king of the 5th dynasty, almost the 24th century BC. The colors are exceptionally well preserved inside the tomb.
The tomb, a part of a massive necropolis at Saqqara, south of Cairo, stands out for its incredibly distinctive design. The tomb is L-shaped and has a small corridor leading down to an antechamber. Beyond a larger chamber has walls covered by painted reliefs that show Kui sitting at a table for offerings. The L-shaped tomb's chamber bear inscriptions and colorful reliefs that are so well preserved that the experts excavating the site were able to discern the fingerprints of the tomb's painter. While the archaeologists hope the tomb will give them a better understanding of the 40-year-old reign of Djedkare Sissi, Egyptian officials hope the discoveries will help revive tourism that took a hit from the turmoil that followed in its 2011 uprising. Reporting in New York, Trinity Chavez, RT.
Shalom, 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 shalom. As always, first I want to give all the praises and the glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Rakah Kadash. Double honors to the apostles and to the elders of Great Millstone. Shalom, shalom, shalom. To my fellow Hebrew Israelite brothers and sisters who have been edified by the truth of the scriptures of who we are, the true children of Israel, the Hebrew Israelites, and who the other nations are. All praise and glory to the hopeful elect of the house of Israel. Shalom, brothers and sisters. So, Acts chapter 21, verse 38, and we're going to go to it very shortly. It says, aren't you the Egyptian who led a rebellion some time ago? Now, who made that statement? Does anybody know who made that statement in the book of Acts, chapter 21, verse 38? That was a Roman soldier, a Roman centurion, who made that statement about the Apostle Paul. He had mistaken the Apostle Paul for an Egyptian. So the story kind of goes like this. If we start in Acts chapter 21, verse 20, Acts chapter 21, verse 37, it says, as Paul was about to be taken inside. Let me go back a few verses, right? Let's now read it out. I want to leave that on the screen while I read it out, and then we can show it to you. Let's start here. Let's start here. Yeah, let's start here. Then we start where we started. Acts 21, verse 37 says, as Paul was about to be taken inside, he said to the commander, may I have a word with you? He was speaking to a Roman commander. So the commander said to him, do you know Greek? The commander asked, surprised, right? Aren't you the Egyptian who led a rebellion some time ago and took 4,000 members of the Assyrians out into the desert? No, Paul replied. I am a Jew and a citizen of Tarsus in Cilicia, which is an important city. Please let me talk to these people. The commander agreed, so Paul stood on the stairs and motioned to the people to be quiet. Soon a deep silence enveloped the crowd, and he addressed them in their own language, Aramaic. So Paul spoke Hebrew, Aramaic, and he spoke Greek, and he was mistaken for an Egyptian. So why was the Apostle Paul mistaken for an Egyptian? Because just like the rest of the Israelites that he was speaking to. Apostle Paul is a so-called black man, so-called Negro that looks just like the Egyptians. This is why the Romans, I remember this took place 2,000 years ago, right? These, what you're seeing on here, are 4,000 years ago. These are the Egyptians. The Israelites looked like the Egyptians. They lived amongst the Egyptians, just so you understand. So the Roman soldier, the Roman commander, because Paul was being chased by a mob, all right? When you read the story, they were trying to kill Apostle Paul, his own people, because he was teaching Israelite Gentiles, Israelites that were living amongst the other nations in the temple, right? And he was speaking to them in the temple, and the Israelites that knew they were Israelites, like the religious ones that knew they were Israelites, they came against Paul. So the story goes like this: the whole city was rocked by these accusations, and a great riot followed. Paul was grabbed and dragged out of the temple. Let me put this up on the screen now, all right, so you can see. Let me just quickly pull this up. Acts 21. Let's get the scripture up on the screen so you can see. I just want you to get that picture in your mind. So this is where today's edification comes from, the title. Aren't you the Egyptian who led a rebellion some time ago? All right, and that's the Roman soldier speaking to Paul, had mistaken him for an Egyptian. So Paul was teaching Israelite Gentiles, as you can see here. It says, for earlier in the day, they had seen him in the temple with Trophimus, a Gentile from Ephesus. This was an Israelite Gentile who comes from the land of Ephesus, right? Ephesus, sorry, I always pronounce that wrong. So these were Israelites that were raised amongst the other nations. They may even knew that they may have descended from Israel, but they were raised amongst the other nations. So they would have been dressing like the Greeks and the Romans and the nations that they lived amongst. So Paul was teaching them. This is why Paul was sent to the Israelite Gentiles. Right? He wasn't sent to the other nations. He was sent to the Israelites that were living amongst the other nations, living like Gentiles. And they assumed Paul had taken them into the temple. The whole city was rocked by these accusations, and a great riot followed. Paul was grabbed and dragged out of the temple, and immediately the gates were closed behind him. As they were trying to kill him, they were trying to kill Apostle Paul, the Israelites, word reached the commander of the Roman regiment that all Jerusalem was in an uproar. That's the commander that came to Paul, we're going to see. He immediately called out his soldiers and officers. So the commander, who's probably a centurion, called out his officers and ran down amongst the crowd. When the mob saw the commander and the troops coming, they stopped beating Paul, all right? Then the commander arrested him and ordered him bound with 2 chains. He asked the crowd who he was and what he had done. Some shouted one thing and some another. Since he couldn't find out the truth in all the uproar and confusion, he ordered that Paul be taken to the fortress. So he couldn't get the truth out of the Israelites, the Hebrew Israelites, so he ordered Paul to be taken to the fortress, bound and chained and bound. As Paul reached the stairs, the mob grew so violent, the soldiers had to lift him to their shoulders to protect him. That's Israel, man. You know these are niggers, right? Excuse my language, man, but you know these are Negroes, man. He says, and the crowd followed behind, shouting, kill him, kill him. As Paul was about to be taken inside, he said to the commander, the Roman commander, may I have a word with you? Do you speak Greek? The commander asked, surprised, because Paul obviously was speaking to him in Greek, right? He says, aren't you the Egyptian? This is what the Roman commander says to Paul. Aren't you the Egyptian who led a rebellion some time ago and took 4,000 members of the Assyrians out into the desert? Why did the commander think he was an Egyptian? Because the Egyptians, which were so-called black people, Negroes, looked just like the Hebrew Israelites, the Israelites. It's as simple as that. He was even surprised that Paul spoke Greek. Right? But Paul could speak Greek as well. But when he looked at him, his appearance, he thought he was an Egyptian because he was a so-called, he probably had his head wrapped in a certain way, but he looked like an Egyptian. Why? He's an Israelite. The Jews were chased him. They know who he was. They know he's an Israelite, but because Paul to the Roman officer looked like an Egyptian, so-called Negro. So Paul says, no, Paul replied. He said, no, I am what? I am an Israelite. I am a Jew. So the Roman commander wasn't shocked when he said, oh, I'm a Jew, because he knows the Jews look like the Israelites, but he just thought he was an Israelite. He says, no, I'm a Jew and a citizen of Tarsus in Cilicia, which is an important city. Please let me talk to these people. So the commander didn't say, hold on, how can you be a Jew? The Jews are white. The Jews are Caucasian. The Jews that look like me. The Jews look like Romans. You can't be a Jew. I'm going to definitely lock you up. You're telling me lies. You can definitely not be a Jew. He didn't say that to him. He didn't react in any way. The commander just agreed and said, okay, Paul. As Paul stood up, the commander agreed as Paul stood up on the stairs and motioned to the people to be quiet. Soon a deep silence enveloped the crowd, and he addressed them in their own language, Aramaic. And then he started speaking in, which is Hebrew, is a form of Hebrew, Aramaic. There you go. Man, there's nothing they can do to stop this truth coming out about who the Hebrew Israelites are back then and who they are today. And we never deny that we are also today scattered and mixed amongst other nations. We always make that point known. We know who they are. Predominantly, they are the descendants of the transatlantic slave trade. Predominantly, they are the descendants of the Native American Indian tribes of North, South America and Canada, today who they call Latinos, Hispanics, Mexicans, and Puerto Ricans. But we also know today we are scattered and mixed amongst the other nations. Hence, the Lord is going to separate the sheep from the goat, the wheat from the tares. He's going to sift the house of Israel. So, let's go to Genesis. Now, Genesis 42:1. Joseph's brothers go to Egypt, right? Now, Joseph is one of the progenitors of the 12 tribes of Israel. This is Jacob's son. It says, when Jacob heard, this is Genesis chapter 42, verse 1. When Jacob heard that grain was available in Egypt, he said to his sons, why are you standing around looking at one another? What I'm telling you, one of us look at one another. Let's just say we're hungry. You can just see the conversation. Anyway, I was having a bit of fun with it. I have heard there is grain in Egypt. Go down there and buy enough grain to keep us alive. Otherwise, we're gonna die. So Joseph's 10 brothers went down to Egypt to buy grain. Listen carefully. But Jacob wouldn't let Joseph's younger brother Benjamin go with them for fear some harm might come to him. Why? Because Benjamin and Joseph come from the same mother. And I believe it's Rachel, which was Jacob's favorite, the one who he planned to marry the first time. And then Laban gave him Leah, the sister, in deception. And then he had to work another 7 years to work for Rachel. And then he married Rachel. And he also had the 2 handmaids as concubines, Zilpah and Bilhah, were his concubines. And then he eventually left Laban, who was Rebecca's, I think it was Rebecca. I think Laban and Rebecca were brothers. So I believe that was Rachel and Leah was Joseph, was Rachel and Leah was Jacob's cousins, I believe, or first or second cousins. So I'll have to go back into it properly to tell you. Either his first or second cousins that he married. But anyway, so Jacob's sons arrived in Egypt along with others to buy food, for the famine was in Canaan as well, right? Today, which we know as Israel. Since Joseph was governor of all Egypt, so Joseph, who was sold into slavery by his brothers, who was literally left in a ditch and was discovered by Arabs who sold him to the Egyptians and then ended up in prison. And then obviously, you know, the story goes, but we won't go into that. Since Joseph was the governor of all Egypt, so he got that position because he was able to read the Pharaoh's dreams, right? Cut a long story short. And in charge of selling grain to all the people that would come into Egypt. It was to him that his brothers came. So Joseph's 10 brothers come to him to buy this grain directly to him. Now listen to this. When they arrived, they bowed before him with their faces to the ground. So they bowed their faces before their brother, right? Not even knowing that's their brother, as you're going to see. Joseph recognized his brothers instantly. He said, I recognize you, Benjamin. No, Benjamin wasn't there. He left behind. I recognize you, Judah. It's Judah there. It's Zebulun there. Issachar. I can see you. But you don't know, say, I'm me. They look again and say, look on Zebulun. What? You can't see Zebulun. Look how you grow tall and healthy. And I say, Gad. What? Gad, I behave like a bad man. But we can see you, Gad. Yes, are you, Gad? We can see you. He said, Reuben, the eldest, the big brother. We can't see Reuben. But no one recognized Joseph. But Joseph recognized all his brothers. Why didn't they recognize Joseph? Because Joseph looked just like the Egyptians who he was ruling over, because he was second in command under the Pharaoh. They didn't recognize their brother because he was dressed like an Egyptian now. Now, if Joseph was a so-called white man, the brothers would have come, seen the black Negro Egyptians, seeing this one white boy sitting amongst them, second in command, and they would have looked at him and said, well, hold on a minute. And Joseph that? What? Hold on. And Joseph that? Reuben, Zebulun, Gad, come here. And Joseph that? Who we trying to ditch and leave him in the desert for dead? Judah, look upon him. They would have been all looking at him if he was a so-called white boy, if he was a Caucasian. But they never recognized him because he was a Negro, just like how the Egyptians are Negroes. That's why I showed you the video at the beginning. These devils know that the original Egyptians, the biblical Egyptians, the ancient Egyptians were all Negroes, so-called black people. The Israelites would have looked just like them, different shades of brown, afro hairs, except we would have had beards and they would have had shaven faces. So we look just like them. So the brothers didn't recognize Joseph. But Joseph recognized his brothers instantly, but he pretended to be a stranger and spoke harshly to them. Yeah. Yo, Reuben, come here. Who's the eldest? Sit over here. Where's your youngest brother? How many of you? How far have you come from? He would have talked to them in a rough way, right? But they didn't recognize him because he looked just like the Egyptians. So he says, where are you from? There you go. He demanded. They say, from the land of Canaan, they replied. We have come to buy food. And Joseph recognized his brothers. They didn't recognize him because he looked just like the Egyptians that he was living amongst, and that now he was ruling over as second in command, in charge of all of their grain and foods and livestock. So, Israelites, nation of so-called black people back then, nation of so-called black people today, but we are also mixed amongst the other nations. Also, as we've always told you, as we know through Bible prophecy, biblical history, secular history, that the 10 lost tribes of Israel are the Native American Indians of North, South America and Canada today, who they refer to as Latinos, Hispanics, Mexicans, and Puerto Ricans. That's the Northern Kingdom. So we are different shades of brown, from a light, fair skin brown that we call red skin. In Jamaica, we call someone who's fair skin, we call them red skin, to a dark blue-black. When someone's really dark, we say them a blue-black. The way they're so dark, they look like a color, like a shade of blue. We're the Israelites. The Israelites are a people, a nation of color. We look just like the Egyptians, except we had beards, they didn't. Let me just bring out a couple more examples here. Moses. The Israelites multiplied in Egypt. Where did we multiply? We multiplied in Egypt, living amongst the Egyptians. That's when we came down there into Egypt, 70 strong, including Joseph and his 2 sons, right? So I'm going to jump down to the point. It says here, it says, now there arose a new king over Egypt, which knew not Joseph. And he said unto his people, behold, the people of the children of Israel, the Israelites, are more and mightier than we. Come on, let us deal wisely with them, lest they multiply, and it come to pass that when there falleth out any war, when a nation comes to war with the Egyptians, they, the Israelites, may join also unto our enemies and fight against us. So get them up out of the land. Therefore, they did set over them taskmasters to afflict them with their burdens, and they built for Pharaoh treasured cities, Python and Ramesses. But the more they afflicted them, the more they afflicted the children of Israel. What did we do? And we still do this today. The more Esau afflicts us today, what do? The more they multiply, the more we multiply and grew. You got to know that. This is talking about us. The affliction that we went through and continue to go through didn't stop us from keep on breeding kids and breeding and breeding and breeding. Baby mother's there. She's got 3 different 4, 5. I'm not saying all of them are like that, but 4 fathers. But there's normally 3 or 4 kids in the family. Baby mother there. She got 3, 4, 5 kids. I got 3 kids of my own. All right, 1 baby mother though, but 3 kids of my own. All right, but I'm just saying, the more we were afflicted, we didn't think. Because I come from a family of 6, 3 boys, 3 girls. My parents came from Jamaica. They were afflicted when they came to England, living under this hardcore racism system. It didn't stop them from having all of these children. They didn't think, oh man, because life is hard, man, we're not going to have no kids. That's all we did. Nearly every family that I grew up amongst in England has minimum 4 children. Let me tell you, minimum. The average West Indian family had 5 kids. The average family, 4 to 5 kids. So the more they were afflicted back then, just like now, the more they multiplied and grew. And they grieved because of the children of Israel, just like how they grieve today when they see us. Because they're thinking, this white man thinks, because they've afflicted us so much, why are they're just breeding like, having kids like there's no tomorrow? And the Egyptians made the children of Israel to serve with rigor. All right. So I want to get down to the point here. Let me just keep reading. So it says, but the more they afflicted them, the more they multiplied and grew, right? And the Egyptians made the children of Israel to serve with rigor, right? Hard bondage. And they made their lives bitter with hard bondage, right? Just like today, right? In mortar and in brick and in all manner of service in the field. I mean, we do all of the crappiest jobs we do for these people. Even though some of us will have good jobs, the majority of our people do the crappiest jobs. And nothing's really changed on who we are and our affliction. We're just under we're under the modern Egyptians today, which is the so-called white man, Esau, the Edomites. It says, all their service wherein they made them serve with great rigor. And the king of Egypt spake to the Hebrew midwives, of which the name of the one was Shiphrah, and the name of the other was Puah. And he said, this is what the king of Egypt said then, no different to what they did today. They call it parenthood, right? They call it, let me see if I can quickly bring it up. They call it parenthood. This is what they call it in America. Started off by that KKK woman. See, birth control, abortion, our services, women's services, birth control, abortion, parenthood delivers vital. They want to sell it to like it's something good. Reproduction, healthcare, sex education, information for millions of people worldwide. Right? This is what they offer you: abortion, birth control. Right? So what did the Egyptians offer? And this is the modern Egyptians, the so-called white man. Right? The Edomites. This is what they offer. This is one of the biggest things in America. So it says here, the Planned Parenthood Federation of America Incorporated, or simply Planned Parenthood, is a 501 non-profit organization that provides reproductive and sexual health care and sexual education in the United States and globally. All right. But this is the main menu: abortion and birth control. All right. Abortion is the main menu. Birth control is like the afters. All right. That's the after or the start. No, that's the starters. And if you get through the starters, they want you to have an abortion. When they see a belly full now, they want you to have an abortion, get rid of it. So the birth control is the starters. So this is modern Egypt. I'm just trying to show you the parallels of these people today, all right, in terms of when we say that America is spiritual Egypt. Let's go back. Where was we? We was here. So he says there, and the king of Egypt spake to the Hebrew midwives, parent planhood, of which the name of the one was Shipra, and the name of the other was Puah. So the king of Egypt was parent planhood, and he was speaking to the Hebrew midwives to get them to do this. And he says, when you do the office of a midwife to the Hebrew women, to the Israelite women, and see them upon the stools, if it be a son, then ye shall kill him. Where are most of our men? Incarcerated in prison. So spiritual Egypt is doing the same thing that's Egypt actually did to us, our ancestors in the past. They're killing them on the streets with the drugs and the guns, and if that doesn't get you, the jailhouse is going to get you. So, and parent planhood wants you at birth. Parent planhood wants to kill you at birth. So if they don't get you at birth, or through birth control, or through abortion, they're going to get you through the system, basically. And don't get me wrong, a lot of our men deserve to be in those jailhouses because they're not just a danger to themselves, they're a danger to us. But the system is put that way, so they end up that way. I just want you to understand. So where was I? So it says, and he says unto them, when you do the office of a midwife to the Hebrew women and see them upon the stalls, if it be a son, then ye shall kill him. And if it be a daughter, then ye shall alive. Because who's the weakest link? The woman. But the midwives feared the Most High and did not as the king of Egypt commanded them. Right? So our women that were in their right mind back then, they didn't do it. But today they're lining up like they're going to get their welfare check to get to dash where they, in Jamaica we call it dash where belly. They're going to dash where they pitney. Today they're doing it willfully because they got an institution called Parent Planhood there for you. But they saved the men children alive. Today they're killing the men children. And the king of Egypt called for the midwives and said unto them, why have you done this thing and have saved the men children alive? And the midwives said unto Pharaoh, because the Hebrew women are not as the Egyptian women. We may look the same, Pharaoh, but we're not as these Egyptian women. We're not as these Hamites. For they are lively. And come on, man, look, we know our women are the most lively. Everyone follows Jake. It's just that we've totally lost our way. This is why the Lord is coming to lift up the remnant. And through that, the rest of Israel will be saved. But they're going to have to face their judgment first, as I said. They're going to have to eat a couple nukes first and laser beam from the chariots. Right? But they will come back after their death into the kingdom. So they're not, the Hebrew women are not as the Egyptian women. So Pharaoh, boy, they look the same, Pharaoh, but they're not the same. Got a different spirit. For they are lively and are delivered ere the midwives come in, and they are delivered, the kids are delivered as soon as the midwives come in unto them. Therefore the Most High dealt well with the midwives, and the people multiplied and waxed very mighty. All right? So, and it came to pass, because the midwives feared the Most High, that he made them houses. And Pharaoh charged all these people, saying, every son that is born ye shall cast into the river, and every daughter ye shall save alive. So Pharaoh said, boy, if the midwives ain't going to get you, I'm going to kill you as a baby born. So the Pharaoh wanted to kill. He said, every son that is born you shall cast into the river. So Esau's got a system that's manufactured and produced and built to kill us. In particular the men, because the men carry the seed. See, the Pharaoh wasn't worried about the woman because they can breed out the women and bring in more Egyptians, because your nationality is dependent on your father, on the seed of the father. So the women wasn't a threat to him because they can breed them out. And then all the children that will come from those women will become Egyptians. But if they kill the men, they're going to kill the house of Israel. But the Most High wasn't going to allow it. So let's just go to where I wanted to go to, really. Then we had the birth of Moses, right? And they went a man out of the house of Levi and took the wife of daughter of Levi, right? And the woman conceived and bare a son, right? That's Moses' mother. And when she saw him that he was a goodly child, she hid him 3 months. And when she could no longer hide him, she took for him an ark of bulrushes and daubed him with slime. So why was she hiding him? Because Pharaoh had put out a decree to kill all of the baby boys of the children of Israel that were recently born. So she had to hide him. So she built an ark of bulrushes and daubed it with slime and with pitch and put the child therein. And she laid it in the flags by the river's brink. And as his sister stood afar off to watch literally what would be done to him, and the daughter of Pharaoh, so Pharaoh's daughter, came to wash herself, because they knew where the Pharaoh's daughter, where the princesses of Egypt came and washed themselves. They're not stupid. When they put Moses in that bulrush in the water, right? They knew who babes in that part of the Nile. They knew it was the princesses of Pharaoh, his daughters. So the daughter of Pharaoh came down to wash herself at the river, and her maidens walked along by the river's side. And when she saw the ark among the flags, she sent her maid to fetch it. And when she had opened it, she saw the child. So she saw Moses in the bulrush, right? What they would call Moses' basket, right? And behold, the babe wept. So Moses is crying. 3 months old is in there. He's been found by the Pharaoh's maidens. And she had compassion on him and said, this is one of the Hebrew children. So she knew that this was a Hebrew child. Why would she know? Because the child is going to be circumcised. She knows that Moses is probably circumcised, right? So she knows this is one of the Hebrew children, all right? That was put out there, all right? And even if he wasn't, he would have been circumcised, because circumcision goes all the way back to Abraham. Yeah. Then said his sisters to Pharaoh's daughters, shall I go and call to thee a nurse of the Hebrew women? Then that she may nurse the child for thee. So they're looking for a wet nurse, right? Because they've lost their children. She knows what's happening. So she's going to save this one. And Pharaoh's daughter said to her, go. And the maid went and called the child's mother. Recently had a baby, but she didn't know that was her baby. So she called Moses' mother to be his wet maid, to breastfeed him. So the Lord had this all set out to happen. Everything that happened was meant to happen. This is like the Jacob and Esau story. No different going back to their forefathers, right? And Pharaoh's daughter said unto her, take the child away and nurse it for me, and I will give thee thy wages. And the woman took the child and nursed it. So she was even given now the thing to raise the child now, because she became the child's wet nurse. So she went, literally, she would have been the one that raised the child as a baby, all right? And the child grew, and she brought him unto Pharaoh's daughter, and he became her son. Now, there's no way Pharaoh's daughter could pass Moses off as her son unless he was a Negro, unless he was a so-called black man, because we know categorically that the Egyptians were black. Now, this period of time is around Moses' time grew up. This would have been around 1600 BC. 1600 BC, around the time of Moses, right? I would say it's around the time. Let me just see what they say here. I'm just curious what they're going to say. But I believe it's around 1600 BC. Moses lived when? Let me just see where it says what they say. There you go. I wasn't far off. Jerome suggests 1592 BCE. James Ussher suggests 1571 BCE. So that's 1600 BC as his birth year. So I wasn't far off from knowing when Moses was born, according, because I'm going by the scriptures than to say I looked in the secular history. Right? I just know by the scriptures what time period it was when Moses was alive. The Egyptian name Moses is mentioned in ancient Egyptian literature. So there you go. So when we're looking at, just trying to give you some ideas. So when we're looking at these things here,
Inscriptions and
this is what the paintings inside this Egyptian tomb, as you can quite clearly see, they're Negroes, so-called black people, is 4,000 years old. So Moses lived around 3,600 years ago. This is 3,600 years ago. This is 4,000 years ago. So this is just 400 years. This is just 400 years off of before Moses was born that these things were painted. So there's no way on God's planet, Yahweh planet, could Moses be raised by the pharaohs, the Egyptians, to be passed off to the Egyptian people who believed the pharaohs killed all of the newborn sons that were just recently newborns, and there's no way that the Egyptians would accept the pharaohs raising a child that's not theirs, of another nation, that would eventually become a pharaoh himself in his own right, if he had stayed, with them when he grew up, after he grew up, before he turned 40. There's no way. Before he smite that man and ran away to the Midianites. There's no way they would have raised him, could have raised him. If Moses was a so-called white man, there's no way these Egyptians, the Pharaoh's daughter, he said he's going to try to pass off some Caucasian as his grandson. Right? Think about this. He's going to try and pass off some Caucasian as his grandson, and all of the Egyptians are going to accept that. Especially after he was killing of all of the male child of the Hebrews who looked like them, because the fear of them, of another nation growing and becoming stronger in them. There's no way on Yahweh Shemel Shai's planet could Moses have ever been a so-called white man. The Pharaoh's daughter raised him as an Egyptian because she was able to pass him off as an Egyptian, just like how Joseph passed off as an Egyptian, just like how Apostle Paul was passed off as an Egyptian to the Roman commander thought Apostle Paul was an Egyptian, because the Hebrew Israelites looked just like the Egyptians. So let's go back, and as you can see, 1571, that's 1600 BC. So where was we? Was we here? And the child grew, and she brought him into Pharaoh's daughter, right? And he became her son. He became her son. There's no way she could have done that if he didn't look like the Egyptians. And she called his name Moses. And she said, because I drew him out of the water. And it came to pass in those days when Moses was grown, right? So when Moses was a big man, 30s, early 30s, mid 30s, that he went out unto his brethren, because Moses knew who he was as he got older, and looked on their burdens, and he spied an Egyptian. He saw an Egyptian smiting an Hebrew, one of his brethren, because he knew he was a Hebrew, even though he was being raised as an Egyptian. So he saw an Egyptian beating down on a Hebrew Israelite, all right? And he looked this way, he looked to the left, and he looked that way, he looked to the right. And when he saw there was no man looking, he slew the Egyptian, he killed the Egyptian, and hid him in the sand. And when he went out the second day, behold, two men of the Hebrews strove together. So two Hebrew Israelites were having a fight. Come on, man, you know that's Jake. Two niggas were having a fight. Even under all the oppression, right? Two Negroes were having a fight. You know that's Jake, right? They was having a punch up. Maybe over a gal, I don't know. So when it says two Hebrews strove together, it means two Hebrews were having a fight. And he said to him that did the wrong, wherefore smitest thou thy fellow? So Moses is intervening and said, why are you looking down like that for? And you're the one that's in the wrong. And then he replied, and then the Hebrew Israelite replies to Moses, and he said, who made thee a prince and a judge over us? Intendest thou to kill me as thou killest the Egyptian? So they saw him kill the Egyptian the day before and bury him in the sand. And Moses feared and said, surely this thing is known. So they saw him kill his fellow Egyptian because he looked like an Egyptian. Now when Pharaoh heard this thing, he sought to slay Moses, but Moses fled from the face of Pharaoh and dwelt in the land of Midian, and he sat down by a well. So I just wanted to show you, boy, they know who the Egyptians truly are, what they look like, as we see from the video. They know quite clearly
that are so well preserved that the experts excavating the site were able to discern the fingerprints of the tomb's painter. While the archaeologists hope the tomb will give them a better understanding of the 40-year-old reign of Djeker-Sissi, Egyptian officials hope the discoveries will help revive tourism that took a hit from the turmoil that followed in its 2011 uprising.
So what you must understand, right, is that those people in the land of Egypt today, they are Arabs. They're not Egyptians. They are Arabs. Those people in the land today, they are from the middle, what they refer to as the Middle East. They're not these people here. They don't descend from these people. The majority of those people in Egypt today descend from the Ottoman Empire, because the Ottomans just so you understand, the Turks, which is the Ottoman Empire, they conquered Egypt for about 600 years. Look, I'm going to show you. Ottomans conquer Egypt. About 1300 AD, I would say, roughly. Okay. Was the second major conflict between Egypt based in the Mullah State. The Ottomans, I'll see how long they ruled it for. From 1516, the second major conflict between Egypt and the Moloch. So 1443. Let's see if I can get a conclusive date here. You're going to see. Levant, Operation Egypt, 1517. The Red Sea, 1517. What's going to tell me here? Hold on. Yeah, also it shows me the length of time. Just see if it's coming the length of time. Because they didn't get taken down until the British Empire conquered Egypt in the First World War. That I know for a fact. So they conquered it in 1517 and 16th century World War. That's where they conquered it. In 1517. All right. Let's see if it shows me here when they lost it. Because I know when they lost it. You just got to watch Lawrence of Arabia if you want to know when they lost it. Watch that movie Lawrence of Arabia. You're going to know. Because they lost. They got defeated in the First World War. Let's see if it shows it. Ottoman Egypt, 1517, 1801. Here you go. This is what I'm looking for here. Here it is. It says Ottoman province until the 5th of November, 1914. See? Just so you can see. Oops. Here you go. It says here, it was the Ottoman province until 5th of November 1914 when the Sultan of Egypt was declared a British protectorate in reaction to the Young Turks of the Ottoman Empire joining the First World War on the side of the Central Powers, October, November 1914. So that's when they lost it during the First World War to the British Empire in 1914, and they conquered it in 1517. All right, so they ruled it for 16, 17, 17, 18, 19, for 400 years. They ruled Egypt for the Turks. From 1517, look, it even tells you up here, it remained formally an Ottoman province until, there you go, it says it all here now, just so you can see. It says the Ottomans administered Egypt as a province, right, from 1517. It remained formally an Ottoman province until 1914, though in practice it became increasingly autonomous during the 19th century and was under the de facto the British control from 1882. So for 400 years, they ruled it. So a lot of them in Egypt today descend from the Turks, because the Ottomans also conquered the Middle East. That's why they're called Arabs. The word Arabs mean mixed. A lot of those people in the Middle East descend from the Turks. That's why they use the word Arabs. It means mixed. They are a mixed people. Those are Arabs in Egypt today. The original Egyptians today are living in a place called Sudan. And they refer to it as North and South Sudan because they split it into two countries. That's where they are today, the original Egyptians. They're in Sudan calling themselves Sudanese. So my point is, I go back again. My point is family. Oh, I was reading all of this stuff up. I wasn't showing it to you. Let me show it to you. Sorry. So Ottoman Egypt was an administration division of the Ottoman Empire after the conquest of the Malamute by the Ottomans in 1517. The Ottomans administered Egypt as a province. Right, this is what we're reading here. The Ottomans administered Egypt as a province of the empire. Right, it remained an Ottoman province until when? It remained an Ottoman province until 1914, though in practice it became increasingly autonomous during the 19th century under what was the de facto British control. So from 1517, they ruled it to 1914, which is the First World War, 400 years. And that's when the British Empire took control of the Middle East, North Egypt. France took control of Algeria and Tunisia, and these Edomites, they had the guns in it, they had the power, the tanks and the proper airplanes, everything. They took full control. So that's when they took control. So when I say to you that they are descent from the Turks and the Arabs of the Middle East, because the Turks are intermixed with those Arabs deeply, because the Ottomans ruled the Middle East, what we know today as Saudi Arabia, Syria, Iraq and Kuwait, Bahrain, Yemen, those places. They ruled all those places as well until the British and the French came together in the First World War when they was fighting against the Germans and defeated. Because the Ottomans, during the First World War, they were fighting on the side of the Germans and they lost that war. And remember, the Germans had to pay reparations for the First World War. The British took all the provinces, all the places that the Ottomans controlled and colonized. The British and the French took it from them and split it between them. They split the whole of the Middle East between them. So you see the British and French, let me just show you, divide Middle East. See? There you go, look at that, it's beautiful. The partition of the Ottoman Empire. The partition of the Ottoman Empire took place on the 3rd of October 1918 until November 1922. It was a geopolitical event that occurred after World War I and the occupation of Constantinople by who? By the British, French, and the Italians played a part in November 1918. The partitioning was planned in several agreements made by the Allied powers early in the course of World War I. Notably, that's what they call it, the Sykes-Picot Agreement, all right? After the Ottoman Empire had, just like I said, joined Germany to form the Ottoman-German Alliance, right? That's why there's so many Turks that live in Germany today. The huge conglomeration of territories and peoples that formerly comprised the Ottoman Empire was divided into several new states. The Ottoman Empire had been the leading Islamic state in geopolitical, culture, and ideological terms. The partitioning of the Ottoman Empire after the war led to the domination of the Middle East by who? By Esau, the Western powers, such as who? Just like I said, family, Britain and France. And saw the creation of the modern Arab world, just like I said, these mixed people, and the Republic of Turkey. Resistance to the influence of these powers came from the Turkish national movement, but did not become widespread in the other post-Ottoman states until the period of rapid decolonization after World War II. Exactly what I said to you, without even looking it up, because I know the history of these places. We do, man. We study. We don't just study the scriptures. We study the secular history because we understand through that. We understand what the scriptures are showing us as well through that. When we're looking at the scriptures and we're going to secular history, we have to know both things. But ultimately, it's all about the Bible, the prophecies of the Bible. That's the main arena, is the Bible and the prophecies. So the Egyptians were so-called black people. The Hebrew Israelites are so-called black people, alongside Native American Indian tribes of North, South America, and Canada. And, those are the 12 tribes of Israel. And today, we are also scattered and mixed amongst the other nations. But the Hebrew Israelites are the same as they were yesterday and today, except some of us Israelites are mixed amongst the other nations. But the 12 tribes predominantly are the descendants of the transatlantic slave trade and the descendants of the Native American Indian tribes of North, South America, and Canada, today who they call Latinos, Hispanics, Mexicans, and Puerto Ricans. Different shades of brown, people. They're not those Caucasians. They never were those Caucasians, and they're not going to be today neither. The great lie. Anyway, I'm going to put it back to there.
Fingerprints of the tomb's painter. While the archaeologists hope the tomb will give them a better understanding of the 40-year-old reign of Djeker Sissi, Egyptian officials hope the discoveries will help revive tourism that took a hit from the turmoil that followed in its 2011 uprising.
The Arabs uprising. what do they call it? What do they call the 2011 uprising? The Arab Spring, because that's what they are. They're Arabs. So, shalom, 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 kau halal, Yahweh, Bashim, Yahushua, Bashim, Rakah, Kodash. I pray you are edified by the edification. Keep praying, keep safe, repent, and hold on to the truth.